Some of those fans are really weapons. Weapons in different ways. Some you just hide your eyes, so the tempo gets a little faster. Some of them are really thin, razor-sharp metal. You cut the throat like that. I hope you don't hurt anybody here tonight.
We'll see.
We'll see. If I were you, I would move my chair a little bit. Anyway, thank you all very, very much for coming down, being here. Thank you. That really means one certain thing, that everybody here wanted to come down and decided, making a decision to come down, and they came. It isn't by accident that you're here, because there are no accidents like that. All the details in our lives, we make them happen. Even the things we don't like and we're sorry and this, we make them happen. What do you think of that idea then? The outside world, your world, is caused by you.
I actually was thinking about that this week, following our discussion Monday night, and can I give a brief synopsis for the group to contextualize it?
You're going to tell them about what we spoke about.
Is that okay? Briefly?
Tell them only about your part.
Okay. The brief synopsis is...
You can talk about my part.
It occurred to me that...
That's mine, yours is there.
If Dushan were here, he'd tell you guys about tending bar.
That one has we slipped a Mickey in that one.
Tastes good.
Mickey Mouse? Yes.
So, it's only just occurred to me in the last month or so since this meeting that how bought in I am to this idea, this anthropomorphic image of a God, and moreover, how in the Judeo-Christian biblical picture of what I now believe is a very human type of entity with who gets angry, sad, or this or that, has these emotions, and who is also, at least in the Jewish tradition, some aspects of it, constantly judging people. And so, in the context of this conversation, where Gail said, are you concerned about having this conversation because, I guess of any retribution for this kind of dialogue that we're having, and then the next day, our nanny it seemed quite off to me and not well, and I made her go to the local clinic, and her blood pressure was off the roof and it was sort of dangerous, and sent her home, and she's on bed rest, not exactly sure where this is going to go. She's been a member of our family now for 4.5 years. And so the thought occurred to me on more than one occasion, is this sort of the consequence of my dialogue? And then I specifically said to myself, wait, this is the kind of stuff that I don't want to engage in anymore in terms of my worldview. I don't want to think that our conversation, my musings about my creator, and wanting to refashion that image, is going to cause a person who's important to me and my family to become ill. And so I rejected that, and very specifically. So that's why I wanted to contextualize it to answer your question. So I think it is a tricky, it's tricky business going down the path and believing, for this man at least, to have such a David-centric view of the world, that everything that happens is caused by me, because of me, affected by me, etc. That's a little hard for
I
this
would
man.
think that everything that happens all over the world is not caused by you. But the things that happen to you, around you, I would say that are caused by you, or that you have a more than fair share in creating. Now, as I interpret the situation, it isn't that you caused your nanny to be ill, but you are directly the cause that she's finding out for now how ill she really is. Without you, she may have done nothing and had a severe attack or something else, maybe died, who knows. But you are responsible that she opened her eyes and went to a doctor and started to receive treatment for her condition. Good one for you. What seems to be the part about you're creating your world that's hardest for you to deal with?
I think it may not be simple, but it's the distinction between how we perceive things. So, door number one for David, or his natural inclination, is, oh my goodness, this is happening because of something I did, meaning the bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Door number two is exactly what the chair pointed out, which is that there's a very positive thing that David did. And so the answer to the question posed for this man is to ensure that David goes to and opens up door number two, because his inclination and his habit has been to live in the world of door number one, which is for lack of a better word, it's a downer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a heavy burden.
Do you have any idea why you have created door number one and why you live in terms of it so much?
I think it goes back to the backstory of this psychology of living in a constant state of judgment. Is David a good person, bad person? Or you're the psychoanalyst, I am not, but was David a good boy or a bad boy?
Well then, does that mean that you have found yourself to be a bad boy most of the time?
I think that David has chosen, more often than not, to put a spotlight on the bad or the negative attributes, including just bad thoughts. So having a judgmental thought about someone that David passes in the street, he immediately recognizes it and said, you are so judgmental. Why are you criticizing this person? And it happened in David's head. It's not articulated to anybody or anything like that, but just that is the a very persistent and constant state of being for this man. And so he does constantly find fault in his moment-to-moment life.
In plain English, does that translate to having a guilt feeling most of the time?
Yes.
What would happen if you took it upon yourself to emphasize a moment of good thought, even if they happen rarely, but emphasize them when they do happen? Gee, David, that was a good thing for me. You really had a good thought about this, or you felt good about that, or you wished that person happiness.
That would probably be a much more pleasant way to live.
Uh-huh. Does that mean we can almost count on you not doing it?
It means that it is, David has to undo 44 years of habitual tendency.
The undoing sounds like a lot of hard work. Suppose you leave that where it is, and even add more as it comes along. But when a good moment comes along, seize it and give some fanfare. Say, gee, I had a good thought. Wow, doesn't happen every day, but it happened now. Send up for the band or something. Because I don't think we're going to have good success too readily finding the cause of why the negative thinking started. But we may have better luck seeing if we can take away some of its power instead of making it 100% of our thinking negative, cut it down to 90%, 80%, see where it goes. Now, it seems to me that there's more to the idea of you're creating your life than your feelings of judgment. Does any immediate block come up about your creating the events of your life? If you're poor, you created it. If you're wealthy, you created it. Whatever is out there, you've created it. And it goes for anyone, of course. As if the world outside our eyes is created by us and is almost a picture of our life.
I think in this person there is a block to that, and something that you even said to me several weeks ago, to the effect that you said, do you think that you're in this alone? Meaning, everything that's happened to you, there's been something else, meaning a creator, divine force, whatever anybody wants to label it. And so this man has, even prior to that conversation, been very subscribed to the idea that there is some sort of higher power that has enabled David, or had a tremendous influence, or given David all of these things. So David has been is very much out of the mindset that he himself is doing all of this, but really there are larger forces at play.
I so often say, this makes sense to me, this is right, this makes sense to me. And when I explore into it, it's harder than what didn't make sense to me. Yes, you're right. And what I did say, I said, but the meaning underneath what I said is harder than the meaning I had before. You're looking at me like you're understanding me. Good. Okay.
See how successful I've been? Everyone always thinks I understand.
You have an understanding look. Go look in the mirror. Okay. Part of what was said was, David, you are not alone. There is a higher power, sometimes called God, all that. There's a higher power living your life with you. You alone can do nothing. Man cannot do. We need the help of this higher power to do anything. Yes, yes, yes. You heard what I said. You understood that. And now I'm saying, you are the creator of everything that goes around. Now, who is you? Put your seatbelt on, because the part that's coming up is pretty hard. Who is this entity that we call you? Or you? Anybody with any ideas, think, throw out something.
I personally am questioning the whole notion of that there is a you. I'm interested in the idea that maybe that's a construction that doesn't actually exist,
Okay.
and that I can understand how it got constructed
Mm-hmm.
and why it got constructed, and so on. But just like a lot of other concepts
Yeah.
that I have, I'm entertaining the idea that maybe that's a fallacious concept, and
Okay.
that really there's a lot that grows out of that. That if the idea that there is this you, if I let go of that idea, a lot of other things would change.
Okay. Any other ideas about this idea that of what is that entity that we call you?
I feel like a different person every second.
Okay. Are you going to call them all you?
For lack of a better term.
For lack of a better term. Okay, I'll go along with the idea, at least for now, calling them all you. Hold with that. What do you think?
Immediately, the thought is a collection of ideas, attitudes, behaviors, a history, an identity inside of a human body, living a life on this earth, backed or fueled by a thing that might be called the spirit, a soul, or something else that really it might not have anything to do with all those attitudes and behaviors.
Mm-hmm. You are tying the idea of a spirit and a soul in with you.
Yes.
Hold on to that. How about you?
I don't think there's a me, really. There is an essential life force. And then there's a whole lot that went along with this suit. And that, I guess, is the you that we're talking about. Going back to what we were saying before, as far as the adaptive creation, it came up in another meeting, the idea of God's plan and my plan. And the idea of God's plan is these things all have a natural magnetic flow to them. Things are supposed to happen a certain way. I have my plan, my aims, my thoughts, which I guess could be you, but it's mostly just this suit thinking it wants this particular thing or that particular thing. But the notion of this God's plan thing, it's almost like a river going this way. I can steer it one way or the other. That's my plan. But I have to go with the flow of this thing, this universal plan. And I think if I ask for something with intention, a life energy, life force, then I can change the God plan slightly. I don't think I can kind of change the current of the whole thing. I can bring power to whatever I want. And in that way, I'm trying to use the notion of creation, because there's this thing which I believe is a river, life force. And I'm not creating that. I'm just kind of creating my space in that. It's difficult to explain, but that's as far as I'm getting right now.
I think a piece from you and a piece that you said, there's a life force. The same life force that without it we can't do anything, not even stand up. Is it a very far jump to think that this life force, your share of it, we call you? Can you take your... Now we say an event happens because you have inspired it to happen, have caused it to happen, have contributed it to happen, and you say, I didn't, God did. Okay? What is the link between what I have called in one sentence you and what you and I are both calling God? Or the higher power, or the energy, or the supreme energy, or whatever that is. As if to say that there isn't one piece that's David and that's not part of the supreme energy, but that everything living is part of the supreme energy. Did the supreme energy make you do it? Or did you do it? Or are you the supreme energy? What do you think?
I mean, what I thought of when you posed the question was that you, me, is just a part of God, or part of the absolute. And so that makes a lot of sense to me, that I am, in a way, God. I am whatever God is, whatever the absolute is, that it's a part of me, and it's what keeps me from standing up or falling down. So that does make sense to me.
So he's saying that he is a part of the absolute. Does anyone here think, feel, or deduce in some way that they can be separate from the absolute? You.
Well, I think that is part of, that is this man's mindset most of the time, that he is some sort of individual and that, and one of the things, an example of what I was describing before is that David will have some judgmental thought about some person crossing the street, and then David will rebuke himself and remind himself, that person is God's creation, no different than you. So you're just randomly criticizing another one of God's creatures. What are you doing? And so there is this, it takes effort to remind it, for me,
Did
to
you
remind
say
myself.
another one of God's
Yes.
creatures, including you?
My point is, it takes effort for this person
You
to
forget
remind
that you're
myself.
one of God's
Yes.
creatures.
Yes.
It sounds to me like this is a stated wish not to be one of God's creatures. Not forgetting as an idea of a bad memory.
I don't think there's ever been a stated wish. It's I think it's just a mindset that has developed over time. I don't think as a child I ever thought about being, what we're talking about now, being part of the absolute. I mean, these are big concepts, being part of God. And I think I mentioned to you once one of the a poignant thing that I once read, because one of the most troubling aspects of Judaism for me was there's this constant refrain about a fear of God, and the first Lubavitch rabbi interpreted this differently and said the fear is being separated from God.
Yes. That's generally
Wow,
considered
that's-
the greatest punishment that can be.
And that made sense to me as soon as I read it. It was kind of a lightning bolt idea. But it doesn't mean that I've been able to frame my life such that every moment of the day I feel part of or an extension of the divine.
It's a wonderful project you have to work with. I think it's fascinating.
Well, the other night you said it's a mess.
That too. Nothing is fascinating unless it's a mess.
You might have even said, oi.
I may have said, "Oi, gewalt." Peter's saying that we are part of the universal mind, God, if you will. So when we decide something or we want something, does that mean that for that time, for that instant, the universal mind wants what we want?
Maybe if it comes true.
If it comes through. Are you saying we have an influence over the universal mind?
No, more so that if there is a universal will as well as a
Mhm.
universal intelligence, if you started wishing for everybody in your neighborhood to drop dead,
Mhm.
I don't think you could really have success without doing it yourself. I think it's because you could not influence this thing called the universal will in that way, or control the will in that way.
See, for years we've been working with the idea that man cannot do. And we bought that idea, it makes sense. they never really came and told us directly, man cannot do anything. Whatever he does appear to be doing is with the help of a higher power. Can this higher power be summoned to help you or you or you or me to do what we would like to see done? Do we have influence? Do we have the influence of asking? Is prayer asking? Or what is prayer?
This man feels that when it's almost a facade sometimes to think of the I. When one looks in the mirror or thinks of oneself, they often see themselves as material, at least this man does, things that are going on. And when that happens, when there's a divorce from consciousness, this man feels that he is not part of the collective consciousness. He's divorced from God. And that's when maybe God doesn't exist. When this man pauses, remembers sensing, he feels that he's acting in such a way that he's channeling what his higher power wants. And he feels that there is a God. He has a conscious contact with what that God is. And feels that he represents what his God wants. And prayer is a very powerful way to have a dialogue with one's God. So this man feels that he prays, he has a dialogue with his God. Example, this morning, after doing his meditation, he prayed quite some time to his God. He wished good things, good energy to people in his group, friends, family, and he feels that is very helpful. He also asks his God for help with other things, the job situation, family, his personal life. So when this man asks for that, he feels that he is opening up the possibility for his God to help him with what that is. And while it may not be, I want this family member to do X, it's taking away the idea that this man is going to control the outcome of what's going to happen and turns it over to what he feels is God, which is his spiritual guidance, to make the best possible situation what that is. And so when this man allows that to happen, about what he thinks his creator's well-being is doing to those situations, he is getting a response when he is praying. And this man believes in that and believes that that is actually the best outcome that could have happened.
Do you believe that this force that you are praying to, communicating with, is a part inside of you, or is a part disconnected from you?
I believe there's a part inside of you that this man feels a channeling of energy that he's part of and connects with him to do what his creator's will is. He opens himself up and he's part of that.
Are you in some way praying to what could be considered part of yourself?
Yes. And I think what that prayer is to be aware of the consciousness that that connection happens and not to sleepwalk and forget about that connection. So opening up the dialogue and praying makes that connection possible. It's like flicking on the light switch, right? The light switch is on, and you turn it on. That energy, the current of energy is happening. And this man sleepwalks, the light switch is off, and he's sleepwalking.
So then you can add the idea that what you're doing there is a state of consciousness.
Yes.
And you're not being in touch with a higher power. Can that be a state of your consciousness? Why do we see ourselves, some of us or most of us, whatever, why do we see ourselves as being smaller than that which is a part of us?
Because of the you. Because of the you.
Because of the you. Go into that a little bit more, because I don't understand it this so far.
The idea of thinking small feels like it's connected to the ego, which is part of this.
Mm-hmm.
When the reality is that we are all part of the universal life force. And we forget this often. And that's the you. We're just channeling through this essential life force. You know you're a part of this. You're conscious of it. So it's the you that comes with this machine.
And then I forget
That's
that
what
I'm
makes,
part of the force.
makes me, the you, think small. Makes this world this big rather than the extent that it is.
Could we call that another terminology for being asleep? Maybe that's one of the big points of being asleep, losing connection with our Creator. That's bigger than not realizing what's going on as you walk down the street. Does it make any sense? Does it seem to you that those could be, that what you're saying of not having that connection is the way you describe your being unconscious?
It's a big aspect. And this man prays for help in seeing God within him and around him, meaning not just to connect with this idea that we've talked about, that it's where each of us has a piece of the divine within us, but how often are we, if we're conscious of that, are we conscious of the fact that every other person in this world also has that piece of the divine? And if we were really conscious of that, how would we behave? And this man, I'm not saying I don't want this, being honest, I'm not there, not out of desire, but that is the most honest and accurate reflection of the way this man is.
Perhaps if you were there more often, you would define yourself as being more awake. Do you think that would make anything more cohesive for you, carrying the knowledge, when I am aware of the fact that I am one with my Creator? Those are the moments when I'm awake and not asleep. would that be defying any terms of your ideas of consciousness?
What do you define?
The idea that when you are of the mind that you are one with your Creator, that's considered a state of wakefulness.
I think it's like that whole notion is like creating two different classes of matter. There's like matter that's imbued with some like holy energy, and there's some matter that didn't get it. Whereas I kind of tend to think that the whole thing is infused with whatever is, and it's that there's not. I'm kind of rejecting the idea of good and bad and presence, that there's a being that's with God or against God, or that kind of, that it all is just, it's all participating in it, and then it's not but like the idea that there's a little bit of, somebody was saying something about how much of connection there is, or how little of connection there is. That there's always complete total connection.
Always.
There's just a question of, do you realize it or not? So it's
Okay.
more in the degree to which you are aware of it, or the degree to which you accept that, or realize it, not whether it is or isn't.
Okay.
That David is completely immersed in this energy all the time. It's just that he's thinking maybe he's not.
Okay.
That's how I'm kind of thinking. But I don't also have any sense that I have any way of knowing what actually is.
It makes sense. What you're saying makes sense. There is not an actual connection. It's an imagined connection that is, or it's imagined that it's not. But it is all the time. Can we get to a point where it's always imagined that it is?
I think so. I mean, that's what I guess I would consider probably enlightenment, as they speak of it, is. Something like that, where you lose that duality, and you're not sometimes questioning it, but it's all that you realize that it is all the time.
Maybe a very good thing to give that some more thought.
I don't think we can turn it off or turn it on. It simply is. The fact that we're here says that it is. This energy, this life force, happiness. But I think that we can irradiate it or diminish it by our connection with them. But it always is. Or else, ground. Nothing left.
If events take place and this entity didn't cause them, who did? Or are there accidents?
This man believes that there is a higher power. Peter described it as the God plan, and so he doesn't believe that there are accidents. There's something else going on that David may not be privy to what the plan is. The chair once likened it to David as though there he is in the middle of the D-Day invasion. David's a private in the army, and he's on one of those boats, and he says, wait a second, I want to talk to Eisenhower. I want to know what the plan is. And he said, you're not going to be able to have that conversation, so get with the program.
You know, I'm still with that idea.
It's an interesting thing. In less anthropological forms, God is not, doesn't look like this. The plan is not this idea. It's almost like the plan is for an ant, go get that piece of food. And it's got to go around, it's got to go in this, use a leg or two. It's easier for me to think of more in terms of nature, where it seems like everything's happening, everything's connected. It's more gaseous in a way. It's not written down, there's not a plan, but everything happens. Tides ebb and flow. We go, we die. It's part of this whole machine. And it's a loose plan. Like magnets say this will come here, but what's in the way of that magnet is not a plan. That's where you get to influence how this happens.
I find it difficult that an event has occurred in my life, which I'm part of it, and that I am completely innocent because I had no part in it. And if I didn't do it, who did? I always feel more comfortable at the bottom line if I did, or I caused, or I had some part in this coming about. I find that easier to live with than the idea that I had no part in this coming about and I'm completely innocent. What do you think, Susan?
In the Kabbalah, it says something, I forget the exact wording, but it says something to the effect that the glory of God is so great that one cannot gaze directly upon it, and one cannot understand the totality of it. So it's kind of like infinity. It's just it does not compute, where our brains are too limited to go that far. But assuming that that's so, there are many, many other doors other than door number 1 and door number 2, I think. I've been sort of fooling around with, maybe it's door 10 or 11. When we look at a movie, we have the illusion that a movie is a sequential thing that is moving in time, but actually, as we all know, it's just individual frames that are all strung together and go by so quickly that it creates the illusion of motion and the illusion of linear time. Well, what if time itself is like that? What if there is no motion? What if every moment of time is just an individual moment? But because we cannot gaze upon it from afar, we're inside it, like the people in Plato's cave who are looking at the shadows on the wall. So we can't take ourselves out of time. We're already in it. And time, moment goes by, all individual little moments. And what if on top of that, there's a spatial element, a dimensional element, where there are multiple dimensions that we're connected to? Why not? We can't, we don't know. The glory of God is such that we cannot even understand that. So it might be like that. And maybe in each of these other dimensions, there's multiple versions of ourselves. And maybe what we're doing is some essence that we have is flitting around to these different versions of ourselves in these different dimensions or different universes. And Kurt Vonnegut wrote about this idea when he wrote the novel Slaughterhouse-Five years and years ago, about the main character who becomes quote-unquote unstuck in time. And one minute he's, I was reminded of this when you were talking about World War II. One moment he's on the front lines of the war in World War II, then another moment he's in his backyard grilling some fish, and then another moment he's on the planet of Trafalmador communicating with these other beings, because he became unstuck in time, so he no longer had to experience his life in a sequential manner. He just somehow would be able to go in a very fluid-like state to these different parts of what was his life in the larger version of him that was connected to all these other points.
This man would like to ask the room if anyone has stopped time or had a sensation of stopping time.
When I was in Peru, taking some ayahuasca, and so many, the time, the concept of time is so distorted. And a typical journey lasts, maybe 4 hours or so. And then at the end, everyone is supposed to be in the room. You can go out of the room and you can go outside, but at the end, everyone is supposed to be back in the room to close the circle of the ceremony. And so I had my watch, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna just look at my watch now, and then in an hour, I'll look at it again, just to make sure I, know what time it is, so I'm back in time. And so an hour later, I looked at my watch, and only 5 minutes had gone by. So then I came back to the United States, and I stopped wearing a watch because it didn't make any sense anymore. But I think everyone in this room has probably had the experience of time altering and distorting and in different ways, sometimes slower, sometimes faster.
say about the back to the point about controlling our lives or our lives being a reflection. I think I used to not really buy into karma. Doesn't really mean too much to me, and this idea of cause and effects didn't mean too much to me. But more and more in the last couple of years, when this idea comes across into my view, it makes a lot of sense to me. That everything that I do right now, everything that's happened to me, I have done something in this life, it seems to me likely to make it happen. And I was thinking of there's this quote by Chekhov, something to the effect of, you can't introduce a revolver in Act. If you introduce a revolver in Act 1, it has to go off in Act 3. And that makes sense to me. And it's like, why? I look at things like music or writing or things, and why does it feel wrong if something happens in a certain sequential event, but it feels right in a different sequential event? Things just feel right, and if they come after another, or if they come before, and that to me is another proof that things that happen in someone's life, there's something that can be linked to why that is so. It just makes so much sense to me, where in the past it didn't really make sense to me. I don't know why it's making more sense, but I do believe that's for better or for worse. I don't want it. A lot of things in my life I look at, wow, I'm stuck in this place, or this isn't so good, but now I say, yeah, it's my fault. There's a series of events, and probably many of them specific, discrete events that happened, and I had a part in that, and I'm in this place now.
When we studied the octaves, remember, the first note of the octave was when something happened. And that went a certain way until the octave took a turn. Then something else happened to make a turn. And throughout the entire adventure of things, it keeps turning when another element is added to the situation. When we remember correctly, everything we did had a certain run, and then it turned when something else happened. Another person or another event, something turned the direction of it. I give credence to the fact that the world outside, all of it, is a photograph of my inside. And I believe that somebody may be sitting out there saying, yeah, but my world isn't like that. And then I ask to remember that no one's world is the same. Your world is completely and totally different from the world that I see. And Derek's and yours, completely different photographs. So somebody walks into an apartment and says, gee, what a lovely couch, it really looks good in this room. And somebody else will walk in and say, gee, that's a really stupid looking couch and it looks terrible in this room. Why don't you throw that out and have it burnt? It looks awful. And that way with everything. It's the same couch, but the eyes of people that see it are so vastly different. As far as jobs, children, wives, everything in the world. They are not the same. So you're walking in the world that you created, and you're walking in the world that you created, and thinking that you could do something so that his world comes out to be something like yours. I see that as a big error. That you spend tons of energy and everything in the world, and you will never get him to see the world the way you see it, unless something really weird happens. Because it's his freedom to see the world as he sees it. All of it, every bit of it. Gee, that's nice, that's exciting, that's good, lovely weather. His world, he defines it with 1,000 sentences. That's his world. And it should not be yours. Nor should anybody want their world to be his. And teachers and gurus and people like that who want you to someday become someone who sees the world the way they do is really, in my book, totally nuts. Really nuts, nuts, nuts. And see, we're always trying to present here freedom. To have a world that you create and that makes sense to you, that you like it. For us, there's no freedom. There's only myth and propaganda and passing on tales for others to believe. And that's I'm totally against that.
Could I ask the chair if he believes that if the world is not to one's liking, that one should keep changing one's beliefs until it is to one's liking?
That sounds nuts to me. But if one likes to spend one's time that way, sure, keep changing it around every day. Eventually you'll give up. It's not worth to leave it the way it is.
So then if one looks around and doesn't like what one sees,
You don't like what one sees. Hello, I don't like what I'm seeing. Yes, this is the complaint department, the emotional center. If you don't like what you see, please hold on for emotional adjustments. Hello, this is the emotional adjustment department. If you don't like it, live with it.
Or change it.
Or change it as best you can if you want to, or what have you.
But I think what was Sue potentially getting at is if David doesn't like this state of judgment or feeling like he's being judged every second, he can change his belief system in how he defines his creator and change that dynamic. Is that the kind of thing that Sue was getting at? Or?
I guess that could be included in my thought.
Was he part of your story?
Well, no, but
He jumped in.
he can be in it.
I'm written out in Act 3 by Derek's gun. I'm taken out.
I think my idea is a larger idea of connecting to a force that is larger than any individual person or any individual thing, perhaps on the order of what Peter Rhodes was talking about. That there's a flow that is happening, call it the Tao or call it God or whatever, and then you find wherever your space is in that flow and you jump in there. I used to be fascinated seeing these little girls with the jump ropes, and they would, be swinging the jump rope, and then another little girl would jump in, and sometimes there would be 2 jump ropes, and it would be like this, and I would be, wow, how did they jump in there just at the right time that they can get in the middle of that? And timing is everything, I guess. But I think that there's a space, a time and a space that we can find that is in that flow. And I think when you're in the flow, you really don't care about what anyone else thinks, because you just feel so good, and it gives you the freedom to allow anyone else to think whatever they want.
Well, that's the importance of the freedom. See, as long as there's some part of mine that says, this is what I got, and most people think it stinks, but I like it. So you're giving people the freedom to do whatever they want. But the second you pick a spot and say, this is what I think is terrific, and I really don't see how you can live the way you live. Now you're judging, and you're making yourself unhappy, and it's a mess now. Freedom is, as a living creature, do what you think is right for you, and let other people do what you think is right for them. And if they really step on your turf and tread on you, shoot them a little bit. That helps their manners a lot. Yes, you were saying.
I was saying, this person was talking to our weekly meeting last Monday, and I expressed it, how meaningful the meeting, July meeting was with this person, doing gratitude prayer. And this stage of this person's life, gratitude is very essential quality. And I made an aim of starting to do gratitude prayer every morning and every night. And I started to contemplate, how do I do this prayer as a ritual and have more deeper meaning than just the acceptance prayer or the prayer was written by someone. So this person thought, okay, let's create something that is feasible. So this person thought, okay, let's create a garden of practice in gratitude prayer. So how does garden begin? Plant a seed. And with the perseverance, with the tremendous effort and vigilance, awareness, and taming the mind, which is usually very low level sometimes, and trying to cultivate and inculcate this gratitude prayer in the morning and night. So this person started to read, what is prayer? And first book that I would suggest read from Gil was Mark and the New Man by the Dr. Maurice Nicole. So Dr. Nicole's idea was one must persevere for a long time. And second thing is to contemplate. And third thing was respond and request. And I realized this person didn't have anything to request or to respond. So that gave me a liberation. This person didn't need anything more than she has in this life, which was very captivating to evaluate. And also the thought came that as long as I can continue to live this life the way it was, that would have been great success. And the list of gratitude was quite astonishing. And this person thought the vocation she has, she could do as long as she's alive, and as one was able to do it. And I began to this prayer, and it didn't go too well. Too many thoughts came up, and too much of chatter. So began to read Hazrat Khan. And Hazrat Khan mentioned about the prayer. And his teachings were, in order to do a prayer, one needs a will. And the will doesn't come from a person. The will comes from the divine. And the divine was God. And he described the fish cannot swim without the will of God. Birds cannot fly because the wing was the willpower of God. And he noted all these things. And this person started to think, well, I have no will. That's been my inner dialogue for 30 years. But perhaps this person doesn't have to be concerned about the will. There is already a divinity that will give me a will. So his idea was to basically do meditation, do contemplation, and actually come to a realization of awareness of one's life and one's being. So this person is really enjoying doing this gratitude prayer, and also realizing that how so many different levels of prayers are going in terms of higher level or lower level. And also the books are written, one should never ask for a person, but pray for others. And it's better to pray for something that is alive than something that is dead. So it's the beginning, and it's practice in gratitude prayer. And this person find something very special that one can develop. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you. I'm impressed because when you speak, it shows that you select your own tempo, you select your own pace for learning, your own tempo for speaking, your own tempo for studying, and you do it your way.
Thank you. And during this prayer, gratitude prayer, I came to read one of my favorite author and a mystic. And may I read this to you? It's Thomas Merton. To be grateful is to recognize the love of God in everything He has given us. And He has given us everything. Every breath we draw is a gift of His love. Every moment of existence is a grace, for it brings with it immense grace from Him. Gratitude, therefore, takes nothing for granted. It is never unresponsive. It is constantly asking to new wonder and to praise of the goodness of God. For the grateful person know that God is good, not by hearsay, but by experience. And that is what makes all the difference. And someone wrote, God gives us 86,400 seconds a day. Have you thanked 1 second? And I like that. So a lot to think about in terms of gratitude. And this person feels very light and joyous thinking about gratitude. So this is something new. And I have all my treasures of our invocation next to me, and different prayers, and continue to practice. So thank you.
Take a wonderful thing and do it again and again, and it becomes more and more wonderful. And the more wonderful it becomes, the more you do it, until it begins to shine like a diamond by itself. What was said before, let people live. If you want something so much from somebody, what you're really saying is you want to kill them, because you don't want them to live their own idea of life. You want them to live your idea of life, which for them is death. Let people live, let them fly. That's why the only thing worth teaching is how to be free. Don't even teach what to do with your freedom. When you are free, you will know what to do with your freedom. What you want to do, somebody else may do differently. Each person is a world to themselves. Let them live that life and that world with these few hours that they have that they call a life. Thank you again. Thank you, thank you. You know what may be a good idea? Show people the bass clarinet. In its case,
Okay.
show them. David Glass lent me his bass clarinet 30 years ago for just a couple of weeks. And I played it and I liked it. And I gave it back to him when the couple of weeks was over. And this one we just took today. And I'm going to try it.
Bill has become obsessed with this instrument. And he thinks it might be the instrument that can give him the sound he's been hearing in his head. So I went to Yamaha and signed it out. And this instrument retails for about $12,000.
So you rent it?
No, I just signed it out because I'm a Yamaha artist, so anytime I need an instrument, I can go and just sign for it, and I can borrow any instrument I want, which is handy. But I had to say it was for me. I couldn't say it was for Gil.
But you signed it out for how long?
Oh, they're pretty loose about it. I just said, hey, can I have this for the month? And he's like, yeah. So if Gil likes it, then
We'll have to steal the car.
we can, buy it at a discount. But it's pretty amazing. I played it up in the showroom. It's a pretty amazing piece of art. It has an extension on it. It has extra keys that make it go down 3 more notes than a regular bass clarinet. So these are the lowest notes, these keys here. Pretty amazing.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, takes a while to put it together. Should I put it together?
If you wish to.
I'm not an expert at playing it, but the sound of it's pretty amazing.
I hear a sound in my mind of what I want an instrument to sound like. Some of them sound close to it, but none of them sounds like the way I want it to sound.
Do you think this is it?
Hmm?
Do you think this is it?
It may be.
He hasn't even heard it yet because I just went upstairs and picked it up and played it to make sure everything was working okay.
I've heard renowned players that play fantastically, and when they put their hands on the instrument, I don't like it anymore. It's not what I'm looking for.
It's a really beautiful instrument.
Hmm?
It's a beautiful instrument.
Hmm.
That's pretty amazing. I'm not really even an expert at
It's wiggling.
Sure looks beautiful.
You have to make sure that, everything lines up the right way, or else it won't play. I don't know how to finger the lower notes. There's one more somewhere.
Is that what you were referring to? The three lower than?
Yeah, there's three low, and I don't, I don't play this instrument, so I don't know the fingerings, and I haven't had any time to sit down and fool around with it to figure out what they are.
Still sounded cool, thanks.
Yeah. Isn't it an amazing instrument?
Have you never? So today is the first time you've ever played a bass clarinet.
Yeah.
Do you realize how incredible, not only it is, that you can do that, what you just did, and actually make music to someone who can't make any music with any instrument? I don't think you fully appreciate just how extraordinary it is.
You didn't do
I did not do it.
Imagine a bar somewhere on a small island. Palm tree here, palm tree there. In the middle is this elephant. And the background music is the bassoon. And the elephant has a drink. The music continues. The elephant has another drink. Has another drink. And another drink. And somebody asked the elephant, "Do you drink to forget?" And the elephant says, "No, I drink to remember." Maybe I take a toot.
You can give it a try, Gil. I don't know. It takes a little getting used to.
I haven't played one since David Glass left town.
That's, I think, the second, almost the second. Oh, here's another one. That's the second to lowest note. I don't know how to play the lowest note.
Do you know who the composer was who Albert Hitchcock used to work with?
Bernard Herrmann, I think, wasn't it?
It just sounded like Vertigo at the first second.
Oh my.
Nice, Gil.
Thank you, thank you. I drink to remember. Gee.
It's amazing.
Wow.
There's a one lower than this called a contrabass clarinet, believe it or not.
Is it bigger?
Yeah. Yeah, it like goes up here and then comes down in a curve like that.
That's only for tall people. Rita Hayworth did that in one of her pictures. The Lady from Shanghai. Her husband is Orson Welles, and they shoot each other in this house of mirrors. And he shoots her. She falls. And she dies. And he says, "I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to forget you. But I know I'll never be able to." That's love.
Sounds like he's drinking to forget.
It didn't feel hard to do.
Wait till you start messing with the register key.
So the difficulty comes, I'll grow a mustache and go to the Congo. What was the Book of Enoch? There's 3 separate books of Enoch. And in them, God sends down the watchers to watch over man, because man is going to need watching and taking care of when God leaves. And the watchers come and they start to fall in love and romance and marry the women on earth. And they give birth to a group called the Watchers, giants. Cleanse it. I'm going to get it. It sounds fascinating.
We didn't hear from Pamela this evening. Just listen. I'd like to hear from Pamela.
I'd like to hear from Pamela. Say
Right.
something. Speak.
Thank you.
I really don't have a comment about what was said this evening, other than I don't know if I think about the idea about what is what James is speaking about with the others. I don't think about that. In terms of gratitude, I think that's an idea that I could use a lot of practice doing. That I really have never found. I find the idea of gratitude something intellectual. It's not really something visceral. And I don't think of gratitude in terms of myself. It's more, what I focus on mostly is what is gestures toward others. And that relationship, which again, I guess is the interconnectedness that was spoken about earlier. But that's what I think about the most in terms of that stream of ideas.
I find that these ideas that we're discussing, like the idea you're discussing right now, many ideas like that didn't hit me right on or easily, but one day they hit and they suddenly became very important very quickly. They didn't come in slowly and gain in importance throughout the months or the years. They suddenly became very, very important. And that led me to the idea of thinking that there's a time for everything. When issues present themselves or ideas present themselves, and they come as if to say, now's the time that we have to do this. Ideas I could have thought about 50 years ago. Say, wow, how come I never thought of that 50 years ago? It's like this idea never existed. And one day it walked in and said, hello, my friend. We're going to have a lot to talk about. And there it was. Shall we have tea and strumpets?
No strumpets.
Excuse me?
No strumpets.
No strumpets.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
It's your openness that helped our conversation tonight. Great. Thank you.
It's interesting what you have going with James or you have with yourself. Because throughout this evening, whenever you've spoken, it seems to be coming from that chair.
It's the ponytail.
So, yeah.
Maybe if there is no you, then
You could have moved over.
Maybe it's just we.
yeah.
What do you tell me for? There's no me either. It's like sometimes, I know it sometimes happens with musicians. Like somebody will play his instrument a certain way, and it seems to be coming not from where the musician is, from another spot on the stage or something. And the person has no idea that they're doing that. But it's happening. You run into that?
Yeah.
She said with some uncertainty.
What I experience more is how the timbre of the instruments change. You know, you hear a trumpet, but for a second it sounds like a flute, or you hear a voice and it sounds like an instrument, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, something like that.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah. And then there's some musicians that do that on purpose.
Really.
Yeah. Because I used to go see Marion Brown, the saxophone player. He
Mm-hmm.
kind of was known as an avant-garde saxophone player. And he was playing a concert with Billy Bang, the violinist, and at a certain point, Billy Bang made his violin sound like a saxophone, and Marion Brown made his saxophone sound like a violin. And then, since Marion was my friend, later I asked him about that, and he just smiled and he said, "That's just something I've been working on."
Mm. Again, thank you for coming down. Thank you.
Thanks for playing too, guys.
Yeah, that's cool.
A two-piece band,
Sharing the same piece.
half a piece.
Yeah, the Eastern kind of Desert Moon vibe and the harmonic minor jazzy blues thing happening over here.
Harmonic minor. Wow! Don't talk like that. This is a clean part. It's a nice people.
Who's making the
Keep it clean.
Yeah.
Was this meeting brought to us by Yamaha? Is this the first sponsor meeting? Do we now
Can we
Corporate sponsorship.
Can we focus the camera over here?
First of many places too.